Axiom number 13, we only compete with ourselves. So what does it mean to compete with ourselves? When it comes to creating art, are you competing with the best version of yourself, or are you competing with the infamous Joneses? So there's a quote from Rosalie Roberts, and she wrote about the rivalry between Raphael, Leonardo, and Michelangelo. Renaissance masters Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are both highly recognized and admired in their own right. However, during their career, they were intense rivals and fiercely competitive with each other. The rivalry between the two great masters began in the early 16th century, when both Leonardo and Michelangelo were hired to paint vast battle scenes on the same wall of the council hall in Florence's Palazzo Vecchio. The two artists were in direct competition as they each completed their commission. At the time of the commission in 1503, Leonardo was in his early 50s and was well known throughout Europe. He was commissioned to paint a huge wall painting of the Battle of Angare, a scene that the recent wars between Florence and Milan. Then, just a year later, Michelangelo, aged only 29 and something of a prodigy, was commissioned to paint the Battle of Cassina, a 14th century conflict between Florence and Pisa on the same wall. This commission came after months of Michelangelo's David, arguably still the world's most recognizable sculpture, and it was unveiled in Florence. Despite his fame, Leonardo now had a rival, and so the best of the best in the art world that has ever been known were competitive, according to this author. So, it's human nature to be competitive, and it has its admirable qualities, and then again, it has its pitfalls. In the Olympics, for example, we often see the positive side of competition. Participants give it their best and their all and spur one another on to spectacular heights of accomplishment. That's the good side of competition that can bring out the best in us. In contrast, we see the ugly side of competition that clouds our motives and amplifies our blind spots. The ugly side of competition is as old as Cain and Abel, but that story had a tragic ending. How can we rise above the very human tendency to become consumed with the idea that someone else's efforts are better than our own and that we have to fixate on that? When we are young, we take delight in our artwork. There is a wonder in learning and how to put a crayon to a page and get that tactile satisfaction of thinking about an image in our minds and translating it to paper via our chubby little toddler hands. Kindergartners with paintbrushes make the most awesome happy pictures of their childlike interpretations of the world. But at some point, Billy looks over at Lisa's drawing and decides his own doesn't look as good. And it starts. We start judging our experience of creating an expression with someone else's, and invariably we can always find someone who does a better job than we can. Some people just give up and decide they have no aptitude for making art. Others get downright jealous or envious. I still remember the verbal lashing I took from a second grade little girl after the teacher asked me to show the class how to draw something. Her bad behavior was obvious, but I've never forgotten it, or her. There's some words that speak to the issue of unhealthy competition, and they come from the book of books, the Bible. Work with enthusiasm, as though you were working for the Lord rather than people. That comes from the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 7. The attitude exhibited in that verse is a game changer. If we are painting a picture as if we're going to present it to Jesus, it brings out not only our best in our creativity and skills, but it puts our heart in a right place. I'm convinced that we're operating at our greatest potential when we are in a strong place spiritually. Conversely, if we're engulfed in envy, we lose that sense of wonder Envy is an ugly emotion, and nothing positive comes of it. My painting teacher, Jim Faber, came from an impressive teaching line of artists. Obviously, he really valued having mentors and teachers. I sat under his teaching for about 3 years and learned a tremendous amount about color theory especially, and painting overall. One statement he made near the end of that time was that eventually you must become your own best teacher. Now, that's an interesting thought. But no one can push us like ourselves, be patient with us like ourselves, or have the unique vision that may be difficult to explain to anyone else. We can learn to teach ourselves and develop a passion to be the best that we can be. The making of art can be a very joyful experience, and that's the aim. Ultimately, it's about being the best we can be in competing against our own last work. We want to develop the capacity to spur ourselves on, to be the best version of ourselves, and make the art that reflects our own unique story. You and I are unique in all the universe, and that individuality percolates down to the artwork we create. What is your unique story, and how does that story influence the art that you make? What kind of visions and dreams come to mind when you consider what your best artwork might be? What kind of feelings do you hope would the viewer experience when they see your art? What might be the best version of yourself? What would that look like? It's pretty exciting to think about. And so the best case scenario in creating art, axiom number 13 is, we only compete against ourselves. I'd love to hear your comments. Please write them down. Please type them down in the space below. Thank you.